Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to be hanging out with you today as we unpack some seriously profound insights from our source material. Today, we're diving into a powerful daily bread lesson called Building the Body Through Purposeful Gifts. If you've ever stopped and wondered why you have the specific talents, abilities, or spiritual gifts that you do, well, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to look closely at the true purpose behind these gifts, and, spoiler alert, it is probably not what modern culture tells us it should be. So let's just jump right in and look at the exact passage from the Bible that sets the foundation for our entire discussion today.
Right at the top here, we really need to look directly at the text that anchors this whole topic. The verse number and content together read 1 Corinthians 14:12. So it is with you. Since you are eager for gifts of the Spirit, try to excel in those that build up the church. Now, what's super fascinating to me is how directly this text speaks to just basic human nature. It totally acknowledges that, yeah, we are naturally eager for spiritual gifts. We all want to have abilities, right? We want to be utilized. But the text immediately redirects that eagerness. It tells us exactly where to channel all that energy, toward excelling in things that actually build up the community. Honestly, this one single sentence is the absolute core argument we're going to unpack today.
To make sure we've got the big picture before we dive into the details, here's our roadmap. First, we'll cover the purpose of gifts. Second, prophecy versus tongues. Third, aim for what builds. Fourth, steps to live it out. And finally, our conclusion and reflection.
Let's start with Section 1, the purpose of gifts, focusing on strengthening the body of Christ.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty mechanics of how these gifts work, our source gives us some super helpful historical context. In this passage, Paul is writing to a church that was, well, highly eager for spiritual manifestations, so he intentionally shifts their focus to clarify exactly why these gifts even exist in the first place. And the overarching theme? It's entirely focused on strengthening the community of believers as a whole. The key findings from the research really boil down to three simple words: purpose over display. Look, it's incredibly easy to value a gift just by how flashy or impressive it looks to an audience, but the text argues the goal is absolutely not personal recognition. God gives these gifts and He designed them specifically to strengthen others. If a gift is just being used as a personal showcase, the argument is that it completely misses His fundamental design. The whole point is building up, not showing off.
Moving right along, here is Section 2, prophecy versus tongues, where we'll be comparing the impact of different spiritual gifts.
To actually see this in action, the source material gives us this brilliant framework that compares and contrasts two distinct practices: speaking in tongues versus prophecy. The text explains that speaking in tongues primarily benefits the individual. It might be this incredibly powerful personal experience, sure, but its external impact is kind of limited. On the flip side, prophecy is highlighted as being far more beneficial in a group setting. Why? Well, because it edifies, encourages, and strengthens other people. Paul clearly contrasts these two to really hammer home the main argument, that spiritual gifts are meant to build up the church, not just benefit the individual holding the gift. The priority is heavily placed on what helps the community grow.
And this illustrates the core argument just perfectly. Let's be real. It's basically human nature to use our abilities in ways that draw attention to ourselves. We naturally want people to notice us. But the text highlights that God's design is remarkably different. He gives gifts so that other people can grow through us. The source emphasizes that when individuals make that conscious decision to shift their focus from self to others, man, their impact becomes so much more meaningful. It literally transforms abilities from just being simple status symbols into these vital tools for community nourishment.
That brings us to Section 3, aim for what builds, redefining success in our spiritual lives.
Our source material takes this concept and uses it to totally redefine how we measure success. It's not at all about stifling your desire for spiritual gifts, but rather having the right goal in mind when you're seeking them out. Just listen to this quote right from the text. Growth in faith is not measured by what we display, but by how we strengthen the community. I mean, wow, that completely shifts how we evaluate spiritual maturity. It's not about how much theological knowledge you have or how uniquely gifted you look to a crowd. It is entirely about the tangible impact you have on the people sitting right next to you. The source points out that a life dedicated to building others up actually reflects the very heart of Jesus, perfectly mirroring how He lived and served.
All right, next up is Section 4, steps to live it out, looking at practical application for daily life.
Now, I know exactly what you might be thinking. Okay, this all sounds really wonderful in theory, but how on earth do I actually do this on a random Tuesday morning? Well, here is the exact step-by-step process from the document to actually live this out.
Step 1, actively use your gifts in ways that help others grow in their faith, like be intentional about encouraging someone every single day. Step 2, choose words and actions that bring clarity, not confusion. Remember that comparison we talked about earlier? If what you're doing is just confusing the group, it's not edifying them. You really want to focus on being helpful, not just impressive. And step 3, actively seek out opportunities to serve in ways that strengthen others. It basically requires looking outside of yourself and asking, hey, how can my specific talents meet the actual needs of the people in this room right now?
And that leads us perfectly into Section 5, Conclusion and Reflection, reminding us to use our gifts to build others up. So to bring all of this research to a clear conclusion today, the message is really simple, but so profound. The text calls us to use our gifts to build others up. In fact, it includes this beautiful prayer asking God to keep our focus on serving rather than being seen, teaching us to be intentional about strengthening everyone around us, because really, that is the true metric of a purposeful gift. And this leads us to a final, pretty provocative reflection question taken straight from our source material. Are you using your gifts to serve others, or just to draw attention to yourself? Whew, it is a challenging question for sure, but an incredibly necessary one. I really encourage you to take a moment today, just pause, and evaluate your own actions. Think about it. What is one practical way you can build someone up today using the unique abilities you've been given? Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep serving, and I'll catch you in the next one.